what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it. The LSU defense is something that, man, I want to give myself fully over to him, you know, after that Ole Miss performance. I really do. We talked about it. Since that first half against South Carolina, you have been dominant. Dominant in the second half against South Carolina. You had, I would say, a wobble in the first half against UCLA. You gave up. I mean, there were a couple busted coverages that I didn't love. There are a couple of just great plays made by UCLA at a couple of different points. But in the second half, you completely shut them down. Excellent against USA. And then against an Ole Miss offense that leads the SEC in every single statistical category, you were dominant. You shut down the run. You sacked them 6 times. By the way, guys, if you go to the SEC ranks right now and you filter out, and I believe you should. I'm a big believer in doing this. I don't know if other people are not, but I always filter out all stats into FBS only opponents, right? I got no need for Tennessee stacking 70 on like Alcorn. Like Tennessee stats change dramatically when you do this because they played 2 FCS teams and they won those games like 70-0 and like 60-0. It matters who you're actually playing against. So right now, if you filter all stats through just FBS opponents, LSU, number 1 in the SEC, number 2 in the country when it comes to sacks. 21 sacks on the year. For instance, Ole Miss had, 24 going into that game? We said they were, they led the nation. Blah, blah. You take out the FCS games, Ole Miss goes down to 20, right? LSU is at 21. So this defense, man, there's some really legitimate good statistics that you can start hanging your hat on. You're very good at getting off the field at third down. Do y'all believe, though? That's kind of the question here. Do we think the sample size is too small? Is Ole Miss's offense maybe not nearly as good, and so you shouldn't overrate this? I'm inclined to believe my eyes. And what my eyes tell me and what my film review tells me is this is a defense that this new coaching staff has been, figuring out its personnel with, and now they have a really good idea of who they trust and where they trust them. And B, you have a lot of young players that are learning on the fly and learning multiple things, learning both how to play on this level, how to play on the college level, an SEC schedule, but also learning technique from very good coaches. Again, you hear me rave every single week about the better technique from the defensive front this year, both on the interior with Bo Davis and on the edge with Kevin Peoples. And the kind of instinctual play from the linebackers with Blake Baker. The cornerbacks, think about the cornerbacks. Still not, overwhelmingly like NFL, they're not like huge prospects, but they're in position. Like a lot of times when they've gotten beat this year, they've been in position. They just maybe haven't got their head around. They haven't made the play. And then the safeties, yes, they're a group that are struggling, but they've gotten better as well. So I see a defense that is ascending, and I think it's legitimate. If you're asking me, is this defense going to end up being pretty good? Yeah, man, I'm buying in. I think it's legitimate, and it's because I've seen consistent growth. Now, like any business or anything else, if we were to put this on like a graph, there's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be low moments. I don't think you're just going to have some consistent, smooth ramp, just getting better and better and better. There will be sometimes where like a game plan has you off balance for a half, or maybe you just get on your heels and you never quite recover. Maybe catch an injury during a game. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect from here on out, but I do think when we look at this defense at the end of the year as a whole, I think you're going to be pleased with the investment that was made, and you're going to feel like that investment was validated. And certainly last week felt like the first truly concrete step in being able to say that. And I think you'll see a defense that finished much higher than where it began, even with said peaks and valleys. The only thing is, it's Arkansas, right? And like we said, Arkansas, as dumb as it sounds, truly is a classic throw out the stats game. It never makes any sense. Last year, Arkansas was god-awful. It was 34-31. Last 4 games decided by 3 points. Again, a couple of years ago, you go to Fayetteville, and it takes Harold Perkins playing one of the best games we've ever seen in order to come away with a win, and they had a quarterback that literally could not throw the ball. No KJ Jefferson in the game. They had nothing going. They were awful that year. And yet, they almost won. And so now you have a quarterback in Taylon Green who can not only throw it, but he can run it as well. The question is, though, and this is the question for Arkansas every single week, which Taylon Green shows up. The incredible Taylon that threw for 416 yards and rushed for 60 more against Oklahoma State, or the next week. He did that at Oklahoma State. Threw for 416 yards, rushed for 60 more. The next week at home against UAB, it's 42% completion, 181 through the air, a pick, no touchdowns, and still got 90 yards on the ground, but completely ineffective. They barely beat UAB 37-27. UAB's really, really bad. So I don't know, man. That's I don't. You gotta, and this is maybe if I'm talking about the building staff and the trust and kind of believing in the improvement that they're showing me and the chemistry that are developing with these players. Maybe you trust that, okay, if you have such a wild card player and you think you have really good coaches, maybe that's a good recipe because they can identify on tape, okay, what's made him successful to this point in this season? What has he struggled with? And then how can we exploit that? I hope that might be glass half full. I hope that's the case for Baker and this staff because he's really good. And if he's on, Arkansas could get you easily. Jaquindon Jackson, Arkansas could get you. Where LSU, though, that's their running back, very good running back. Got to stop the run, much like you did against Ole Miss. Where LSU should have a massive advantage, though. The Arkansas secondary is not good. Really not good. I mean, again, Alan Bowman and Oklahoma State threw the ball all over the field on him and ended up winning that game in overtime. Kyron Lacey, is CJ Daniels going to be back?
They said he's probable.
Okay. Kyron Lacey, CJ Daniels, Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, maybe you get Chris Hilton. These guys should be looking to feast this game, as should Garrett Nussmeier. You have a massive advantage in that matchup. It's a big enough advantage where it should be a big enough advantage to decide the game, in my opinion. The real question for LSU going into this game is an intangible one. Can you handle success? We've seen examples just in the recent history on college football teams that could and could not. Alabama could not. You beat Georgia at home, insane game. The next week, you drop to Vandy. And that's not to take away from Vandy, but absolutely Alabama rested on their laurels that week. Vandy, on the other hand, beats Alabama, biggest win in program history. And then they go play Kentucky. And objectively, Kentucky should be way ahead of wherever Vanderbilt is. They've always been better. They have more investment. Stoops has been there longer. And yet what does Vandy do? They handle success. Diego Pavia, one snap and clear. Stays locked in, 24-hour rule in effect, and they go and they beat a Kentucky team. We all chose Kentucky on the 104.5 ESPN staff to a man. But Vandy handled success. Can LSU do the same? Because make no mistake, this last game, like we said, it was special. It was one of them, grab a shred of immortality games. You've been walking around town. Everybody's been talking to you about it. You're winning Player of the Week awards. Every question you're getting is still about last week. Can you turn the page? Can you lock in? Again, in theory, Brian Kelly's program should be able to. It's process-oriented. By definition, not results-oriented. But it's one thing to say that. It's one thing to have processes in place on paper. It's another thing to execute on them and to really follow through. And it's such a very tough 2-week stretch. Arkansas game, always close in Fayetteville and on the road at College Station. Arkansas, very high vibes as well. Coming off a bye. Coming off of beating Tennessee at home. You better come correct or you're going to be in trouble. And never forget, baby, you playing for the Golden Boot. The most dangerously serrated trophy in all of college football. Probably the only trophy that could be used as a legitimate guillotine should the need arise. So lock in and get ready to beat the Hogs this weekend. I feel good about it. I got LSU by 3. I got LSU by 3. I think I would love to sit here and pretend like I think it's going to be a blowout or an ass kicking. I've just learned my lesson there. I've been calling that too many times as of late. If that happens, good. Great. We'll all enjoy not feeling like our hearts are about to explode the entire game. That's actually, I mean, that is kind of the best feeling in the world. But I think you're in for a battle come Saturday. So lock in, buckle up, and let's freaking go, dude. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.